Right, so on 110 it says simplify and state the excluded values. So when you want to simplify, you want to factor and see whatever factors they have in common in the numerator and denominator and simplify those out. Okay? So number 110, we've got 3a squared plus 15a. The numerator, when I think about what I can factor out, they both have a factor of 3 because 15 is divisible by 3, and then they at least have one a. So I'm going to factor out a 3 and an a. And 3a squared divided by 3a is just 1a left over, plus, and then 15 divided by 3 is 5, and then the a is gone, divided by a plus 5. Now, in stating the excluded values, that is just whatever makes the denominator equal 0. So whatever makes the denominator equal 0. So the denominator is a plus 5, so even though I'm going to cancel it out in just a second, it's still in the original expression, so I say a cannot equal negative 5 because that's what makes it 0. And then, as far as simplifying goes, a plus 5 and a plus 5, this is being multiplied by that. If it was 3a plus a plus 5, I could not do this. But as it is, they're like that, so my final answer is 3a as long as a does not equal negative 5. Okay? Number 111, we need a factor. So, in the numerator, I'm going to factor out a 5, because I notice it's 5, 5, and 10. So I've got n squared minus n minus 2. And so the factors of negative 2 that add up to negative 1 are 2 and 1 with a negative 2. So I've got n minus 2 and n plus 1. And the denominator, I'm going to have to do bottoms up because 3, 4, and 4 don't have a common factor. So 3 times negative 4 is negative 12, and the factors of negative 12 that add up to negative 4 are 2 and 6 with a negative 6. So I'm going to think of it as n plus 2 over here and n minus 6, but remember to divide by the 3. So this one doesn't simplify, so it bottoms up. I've got 3n plus 2. This one does simplify, so I've got n minus 2. So before I simplify anything, I'm going to go ahead and state my excluded values. N cannot equal anything that makes the denominator 0. So if I were to bring the 3 down, do reverse bottoms up. And so think of it as, well, just think of it as this right here. The opposite of positive 2/3 is negative 2/3. And the opposite of positive 2 is, or the opposite of negative 2 is positive 2. Okay? The only other thing I can do is cancel out the n minus 2's. And so my answer is 5 times n plus 1, or 5n plus 5, over 3n plus 2. And there we go. On 112, I notice that the numerator terms, all of them are divisible by 3, and they each have an n in them. So I'm going to take out a 3 and an n and see what I'm left with. So 3n cubed, I take away the 3 and one of the n's, I'm left with n squared plus 2n plus 1. And in the denominator, I notice that they're all divisible by 3. So I'm left with 5n squared plus 4n minus 1. Okay, so I still need to factor. I'm going to go ahead and factor the numerator. The factors of 1 that add up to 2 are 1 and 1. So I've got 3n times n plus 1 times n plus 1. And the denominator, I need the factors of, bottoms up, negative 5 that add up to positive 4, so 1 and 5 with a negative 1. And then, so if I wrote n minus 1 and n plus 5, I would have to divide by the 5. And so this becomes 5n, so I've got that 3, so I'm going to put that 3 in the front. This becomes 5n minus 1, and this becomes n plus 1. Right? So I need to state the excluded values. N cannot equal anything that makes the denominator equal to 0. So this, I can look back at this and say the opposite of negative 1/5 is positive 1/5, and the opposite of positive 1 is negative 1. And then anything that cancels out, I've got n plus 1's, and then I've also got this 3 in the front. So the only thing I have left is n times n plus 1, or n squared plus n, over 5n minus 1. And there's my answer. Right here I've got the numerator. The factors of negative 8 that add up to negative 2 are 4 and 2 with a negative 4. And the denominator I need to do bottoms up because 2, 5, and negative 12 don't have a common factor. So the factors of negative 24 that add up to negative 5 are 8 and 3 with a negative 8. So I've got x minus 8 and x plus 3. Got to remember to divide by the 2. So this simplifies to x minus 4. And this one simplifies to 2x plus 3. Okay. So I'm going to state my excluded values. X cannot equal anything that makes the denominator 0, so positive 4 and a negative 3 halves. And my answer is x plus 2 divided by 2x plus 3. Okay. What are you doing? What are you doing? That's fine. So on 114, as far as like adding and subtracting fractions, the only way you can add or subtract fractions is if you have a common denominator, and they already do have a common denominator, so I can just combine their numerators. So it's really just m minus 5n plus 2m plus n over 10m. So remember, anytime I have a fraction like 1/7 plus 3/7 is just 4/7. So you add the numerators, but you leave the denominator the same, okay? So this is really just 3m minus 4n, because you combine the negative 5n and the 1n, divided by 10m. I cannot cancel out the m's because I'm subtracting this right here. Only if it's complete multiplication can I do that. Okay. Now, number 115, 3x and 5 are my denominators. They have nothing in common, so they need each other. So if I multiply this by 5 and I multiply this by 3x on top and bottom, then I have a common denominator. So I'm really just dealing with 5 plus 12x squared over the common denominator 15x, and there's nothing I can do to simplify, so that's my answer. On 116, 4 and 3a minus 5 do not have anything in common, which means they need each other. So I'm going to multiply this one by 3a plus 5 on top and bottom. And on this side, I'm going to multiply by 4. Now I could put the 4 in the end. I'm going to put it right there to make it a little bit easier to see that my numerator, well, let's just go ahead and say the denominator. The denominator is 4 times 3a plus 5. Right? We have a common denominator. The numerator is this 3 times 3a plus 5 minus 4 times 2a minus 2. And the reason I wanted to write it like this first is so that you can actually see that we are going to have to distribute a negative 4, not just a 4, but a negative 4. So I've really got 9a plus 15 minus 8a plus 8 over the common denominator, which is 12a plus 20. So my final answer is 9a minus 1a is a, 15 plus 8 is 23, a plus 23 over 12a plus 20. And that's my answer. Alright, on 117, 3n minus 1 and 2n minus 2 do not have any common factors. I could factor out a 2 here, but it would leave me n minus 1, and that's not a factor of that. So I need a 2n minus 2 here on top and bottom. And I need a 3n minus 1 here on top and bottom. Okay, so my common denominator is 2n minus 2 times 3n minus 1. And my numerator is 6n squared minus 6n plus 9n minus 3. So my numerator is 6n squared plus 3n minus 3 over my denominator of 2n minus 2 times 3n minus 1. Okay. Now, if this were to factor and it doesn't. But if it were, then I would have to simplify. But I don't. Okay. On 118. So on 118, I've got the first denominator is a quadratic, so I'm going to try and factor that to see if I have any common factors. So the factors of 24 that add up to negative 11 I'm thinking 8 and 3, if they're both negative, will multiply to give me a positive 24 and add up to a negative 11. So I'm thinking v minus 8 and v minus 3, but I've got to remember to divide by 2. So this is actually v minus 4 and 2v minus 3, which I was kind of suspecting that one of them would be 2v minus 3. So they have one factor in common, 2v minus 3. So the only thing this needs to be the same thing is a v minus 4. So I'm really just dealing with 3v plus 2v squared minus 8v over the common denominator, which is really just this, 2v squared minus 11v plus 12, or that. And that makes my final answer 2v squared minus 5v, because negative 8v and 3v is negative 5v, over. So you can either write it like this quadratic, or you can leave it like the factored out 2v minus 3 times v minus 4. Either one is fine with me. On number 119, this right here is the only thing, like this denominator, that denominator have nothing in common, but this denominator can be factored. So the factors of 12 that add up to negative 7. So what I noticed is that v minus 4 is a factor of this, and v minus 3 is a factor of this, so these are both represented here. So all I need to do is make sure that they are in, each fraction has both of them, and we're good. This one has a v minus 4, it needs a v minus 3. This one has a v minus 3, it needs a v minus 4. So I'm really dealing with this. I've got this times this, 3v squared minus 9v. And then I'm going to distribute a negative 3 here. So minus 3v and then plus 12. And then plus v, because this doesn't need anything because it already has both denominators, okay? So as long as I multiply this one by v minus 3 and this one by v minus 4, then they have the exact same denominators, okay? So just combine like terms. And I've got 3v squared. Negative 9v minus 3v is negative 12v, plus v is negative 11v, and then plus 12. And there's my answer. 120 starts multiplication. So when you multiply, the idea is just basically to factor as much as you can and cancel out whatever you can. All right? So I can't factor anything here, but I can factor out a common factor here of 6p squared. So I've got 1 over 6p squared times, factor out a 6 and 2 p's, and I'm left with 1p minus 36 divided by 6 is 6. And both p's are gone, divided by p plus 2. So then the idea is to cancel out whatever you can. That's exactly the same thing, and we're multiplying. So my final answer is p minus 6 over p plus 2. I cannot cancel out these p's because I'm adding and subtracting to them, okay? So that's my answer. On 121, I need a factor. So I think about the, okay, I'm going to go ahead and just rewrite it. I can factor out an 8 and a v from the denominator, so 8v, and I'm left with 7v minus 5, which means I can go ahead and cancel those out, times, so the 3v squared is in the denominator, and then I need to factor this. So I'm looking for the factors of negative 105 that add up to 16, and I think we were doing this earlier, and it was 21 and 5? Yeah. So I need a positive 21 and a negative 5 in order to add up to a negative, or positive 16. So that's v plus 21 and v minus 5. But I got to remember to divide by 7. So I've got v plus 3 and 7v minus 5, which means those cancel out. And I'm really just left with v plus 3 over 3v squared. And there's my answer. Okay, on 122 we switch to division, and when you divide fractions you just have to remember to flip and multiply the second fraction. So anything I can factor I'm going to. X minus 1 I can't do anything with. 3x minus 3 I can factor out of 3, and I'm left with x minus 3 divided by 3 is 1, times, so then I flip this fraction, x minus 3 over 1. The x minus 1's cancel out, and I'm just left with x minus 3 over 3. Again, I cannot cancel out the 3's because I am subtracting. On 123, I noticed that the denominator here is actually divisible by 2, or yeah, I'm going to factor out 2 right quick and see what I can do it. Well, I'll just do it down here. 2 times p squared minus 4p plus 4. And then if I can further factor that, then I will. The factors of 4 that add up to negative 4 are negative 2 and negative 2. So it's actually p minus 2 times p minus 2. So I'm just going to, that is that, so times. Now, this will go in the numerator, and this will go in the denominator. So I changed it from division to multiplication, and then I flipped the fraction. So 4p minus 8p, 4p squared minus 8p, can factor out a 4 and a p, and I'm left with p minus 2, because 8 divided by 4 is 2. So here's what I see. I see a p minus 2 and a p minus 2. I see a 4 divided by 2 is 2. And then I also see that I've got a times by p here and a times by p there, so those can go away. So the only thing I'm left with in the numerator is a 2, and in the denominator I'm left with a 5 and a p minus 2, or 5p minus 10. And there we go. Alright, on 124 it's multiplication, so I don't need to flip anything. So I just need to see what I can factor out. 10 and 16 are both divisible by 2, so I'm going to factor out a 2, and I'm left with 5n plus 8 divided by 2, which means I can go ahead and cancel those out, times 7 and 56 are both divisible by 7, so I'm going to say n plus 8 times 7, and then 30 and 48 are both divisible by 6. So I'm left with 6. 6 goes into 35 times, and 6 goes into 48 8 times. So then I see that 5n plus 8 cancels out, so I'm really just left with 7 times n plus 8, or 7n plus 56 over 6. Alright, and then last one, 125. So we're going to be factoring a lot, which is fine. So, I'm going to do these on, I'll post it. So 25b squared. Different color. Minus 20b plus 4. Okay, there are not factors, a common factor of 25, 20, and 4, so I've got to do bottoms up. So the factors of 100 that add up to negative 20 are negative 10 and negative 10. So I've got b minus 10 and b minus 10, but I've got to remember to divide by 25. 10 25ths is the same thing as 2 fifths. So it's actually 5b minus 2 times 5b minus 2. Okay, so remember I've got one fraction divided by another, so I'm going to change it to multiplying by another. So the top one is 5b minus 2 times 5b minus 2. And in the denominator, I've got 10b minus 4, so I can factor out a 2. And I'm left with 5b minus 2. So I already know one of those is going to cancel out. Okay, now times. Now I need to see what happens over here. I've got 6b minus 2, that goes to the numerator, right? So I can factor out a 2, and I'm left with 3b minus 1. Okay? And then in the denominator the denominator is going to be the numerator, yeah? So we flip the fraction. So I'm going to factor that right here. Well, I'll factor here. 15b squared minus 11b plus 2. I'm looking for the factors of 30 that add up to negative 11, and that is negative 6 and negative 5. So I've got b minus 6 and b minus 5. Divide by 15. 6/15 simplifies by 3, so that is a 2 and a 5. 5/15 simplifies by 5, and that's a 1 and a 3. So I'm really dealing with 5b minus 2 and 3b minus 1. Okay? So, now that everything is factored, we simplify. 5b minus 2, 5b minus 2, 5b minus 2, 5b minus 2, 3b minus 1, 3b minus 1, and a 2 divided by 2 is 1. So basically I'm left with 1 divided by 1, which is 1. And so that's my final answer, and that's the last problem.